After getting a chilly response, U.S. President Donald Trump dropped his push for allies to join in protecting the Strait of Hormuz, while expressing his anger and dissatisfaction against not just European countries, but also South Korea. For more, we have our Kim Bo-kyung here in the studio. Welcome back, Bo-kyung.
Thanks for having me.
So, Bo-kyung, Trump lashed out at his allies for not joining his naval coalition. Now, his outreach was pretty intense, right?
Right. Apparently, Trump was really outraged, according to the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who posted on his social media X on Tuesday, where he said he has never seen Trump get that angry in his life. He and Trump discussed the passive attitude of European allies toward military support to maintain passage through the Strait of Hormuz, where he said he sympathized with Trump as the passage through the strait benefits Europe more than the U.S. He further warned that if European allies do not support controlling the Strait of Hormuz, it will lead to extensive and severe repercussions for both Europe and the U.S. One expert, in fact, said the refusal could lead the U.S. to ask allies to bear more burdens in the future.
This may be more about financial burden sharing than about military cooperation anyway. So now the Americans have asked for help. The allies have refused to provide it. And now President Trump can say, well, all right, the least you can all do now is pay a lot more for your own defense. But
well, Bo-kyung, we just saw in Su-young's report earlier, split reactions from Trump's war against Iran are emerging. Could you give us more details on this?
Right. So Joe Kent, the head of the National Counterterrorism Center, resigned over the war, and he's the very first senior Trump official who is known to quit. His resignation means a lot, according to The Hill, who cited Kurt Mills, the editor of the American Conservative magazine. This is bigger than any resignation, as Joe Kent is not a nobody. Rather, he is one of the most prominent people in the government. And also, a former counterterrorism director on the National Security Council said his resignation is a major development since his decision is based on principle over his policy disagreement rather than for performance in his position. He added it remains to be seen if other senior officials would likewise resign.
Right, we'd have to wait and see. Now, Trump has already dropped his request for his allies to join in the naval coalition, but we never know if the request would drop off completely. But in the meantime, I know that one of Seoul's options was deploying the Cheonghae unit. Bo-kyung, tell us more about that.
Right, so it is true that the Cheonghae unit was one of the top options on the list because it is stationed in the Gulf of Aden near Somalia, which means it can reach the Strait of Hormuz within just a few days. But there are two big obstacles to this option. First, the unit's capability is centered on the 4,400-ton destroyer Daejoyoung, which can respond to missile threats and underwater drone attacks to some extent. However, it lacks mine countermeasure capabilities, which are essential as Iran has been deploying naval mines in the strait. And secondly, it needs National Assembly approval to deploy the unit in a real warfare. There was a time when the unit escorted Korean commercial vessels near the strait in 2020. That did not need extra approval as it was to protect Korean nationals. But this time it is joining the U.S. collective defense, so this is a totally different matter. The defense minister, in fact, drew a clear line during a parliamentary meeting on Tuesday that even if a request comes in, they are not considering deploying the Cheonghae unit, as it is not suited for the mission in the Strait of Hormuz, where an actual conflict is taking place.
The Cheonghae unit, deployed in the Gulf of Aden, is primarily tasked with protecting our merchant vessels and combating piracy, while the Strait of Hormuz is a real war zone.
The expert also pointed out that Seoul does not have to feel responsibility over this issue.
well, you know, the alliance between Korea and America rests on a defense treaty, not an offense treaty. So it doesn't apply if either America or Korea starts a war. So I think South Koreans do not need to feel like they're being bad allies here if they're not enthusiastic about rushing into the Strait of Hormuz, which would be, I think, a very reckless thing for the government to do.
You see, Seoul could dispatch non-combat forces to serve auxiliary functions somewhere out of the strait, the experts said. But that would also need National Assembly approval. So if Trump requests once again for help with the war against Iran, we would have to discuss a variety of options.
Right. Deploying Cheonghae unit to the Strait of Hormuz was maybe an unrealistic option to begin with. Easier said than done.
Right.
Po Kyung, thanks for coming in tonight.
Thank you.